So Phil, what field are we in?
We're in the bull pits.
And it's nothing to do with bulls or pits.
Nothing to do with bulls. It is to do with pits. Bull pits originates from where they dug the clay to make the bricks for the house.
Right.
Bull being a reference to the bricks and pits being to a clay pit.
Very good. And I've never been fertiliser spreading because I hate fertiliser for several reasons. One, it's just adding chemicals to the ground, and two, it costs a fortune, and I see it in our zero accounts, and I know that every year we're spreading less. In fact, I think it's 20% less each year. Is that about right?
I think that we're using a lot less compound fertilisers, so phosphate and potash, because we're getting that from other sources, and we've changed our nitrogen fertiliser, so instead of using ammonium nitrate we're using urea.
Oh.
And urea is much less damaging to the soil organisms compared to ammonium nitrate.
Have you ever thought about cleaning your windscreen?
Well, there is a point in that, yeah.
'Cause I'm trying to film it going out. And there's nothing there.
No.
Okay, so also this field is so lumpy.
It's very stony and it has a big wet patch in the middle of it, and so yeah, it comes up as a bit bumpy.
How do you know where you're going and where you've been?
It's a good question, that. There's two ways I know where I'm going. We drill what are called tram lines, so where we want the tractor to go, we shut off those drill rows so you can see the mark in the crop, so you follow those, and this device here tells me where I've been, and it can tell me where to go. So if I haven't got any tram lines, I can ask it to show me where 24-metre widths are, and you can see where it's green, that's where it's coloured it in.
Oh yeah.
And so that's how I know, and I can go back to the right spot, because one of the important things with fertiliser, particularly given how expensive it is to spread it accurately and not to overspread it. So we use a headland kit, for example, so that it doesn't throw it in the hedges where it's not going to do the hedge any good and it's not going to do us any good. And then the sat nav, if you like, means that we always go to the right place in the field and we spread at the right width.
Now you are on a regen journey, whether you like it or not, really. How has your attitude to this process changed?
My attitude to this process is, first of all, to understand what we were doing. So we just took advice and we put ammonium nitrate on. The crop grows green in about 4 days. It does what it says on the tin. We didn't worry about too much else. But then the price of fertiliser, notably ammonium nitrate, went up. The price of wheat stayed more or less the same. And so that sparked the idea that actually this wasn't working very well and we ought to find out more about what we were doing, which is what we did, which is partly what started us on a regen journey. And we started to realise, A, we weren't doing the correct inputs versus outputs, but probably more importantly, some of the practices we were doing were actually physically damaging the situation and making it worse. And
so your ultimate aim is to use no fertiliser.
Ideally, yeah.
And so why don't you just stop, you drug addict?
One of the factors of ammonium nitrate, and this is shown, so you'll know that legumes have a symbiotic relationship with rhizobacter, which fix nitrogen. Now, if you put nitrogen on a legume crop, not that you'd want to, but if you did, the bacteria just stop fixing nitrogen because they don't need to. There's plenty about. And that's what happens in the soil. So the fungi and the other bacteria that might fix a bit of nitrogen or release nitrogen from organic matter and so forth, they don't bother because there's plenty of nitrate about. urea is a different chemical form of nitrogen, and it fits better into the nitrogen cycle that involves the plant. So it doesn't disturb that relationship. The plant has to do a little bit of work to get the nutrient out of it, and therefore it doesn't have this damaging effect on the rest of the soil biology. It still costs, and so ideally, if we can get nutrients from other sources, 70% of the air is nitrogen.
And so this year, I know that you're using your own biology. Is that going to help you cut your fertiliser more, or are there other things?
Ultimately, putting biology back and then caring for it will mean that we get to use quite a lot of nutrients that are in the soil but not readily available. But ultimately, we do have to replace the nutrients that we take out of the field. So we can do that either by adding amendments to the field, such as farmyard manure or biosolids, or other more natural, slow release type nutrient sources that hopefully don't cost very much, and you can start to balance the situation then if you start to look towards things like composts, worm casts, those sorts of things, they are highly rich in nutrients, but they are in a form that in a well-structured soil they stay in the soil better, so they don't leach as badly, and so you get more bang for your buck. So there's a lot of talk about the efficacy of solid applied fertiliser, and some reports and calculations under certain circumstances you can only get about 10 or 20% benefit of what you put on, which is a nightmare if it's cost you £700 a tonne to put it there. So you need to increase that efficiency of the use of your nutrients, and one way you can do that is to start replacing it with foliar nutrients, and done in the right way you can get a much better result from a foliar nutrient in terms of how much you apply and how much the plant picks up.
So that is spraying it on the leaf?
Yeah.
Because there's leaves here.
Yeah, this is a grass crop, so this is a little bit different. We don't know as much about grass crops grown from grass seed. We assume it'll be broadly similar. In some ways, as you can see at this time of year, the grass has fully covered the ground, so the ground is fully protected.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, you're probably right that it probably would respond to foliar, and we might well try a strip when we've got some foliar on the go on the cereals. But the cereals are only just getting to the point that there's enough biomass for them to intercept all the foliar that you put on, because it's a waste of time putting it on the floor.
Now, I know the other trial that you're doing is with biochar, and I know with biochar that hasn't been charged, it can actually eat the nutrients for the first year. So you've been charging yours in the cow sheds?
Yeah, I think I'm a big novice in biochar so far, but everything that I see...
Won't stop you telling me about it,
well,
surely?
No, probably not.
No.
But everything I've seen so far tells me that it can only enhance the situation. And one of the great things about biochar is the longevity of it in the soil. So once you put it there, it's working for you for a long, long time, hundreds of years potentially afterwards. It maintains its structure, it's completely stable. And so this idea that it provides a home for the bacteria really helps. You sort of think, well, actually, if I put the bacteria and possibly the fungi, but mostly bacteria and the biochar on together, which is basically what charged biochar is, the bacteria can live in the biochar, they're protected, they're happy, and they will help this cycle of nutrients that goes on in the soil in ideal conditions. And so that, there's not much bad to think about biochar. The only negative, and it's not really negative because I think of how we're using it, if you put too much on, carbon wipes out quite a lot of the weed killers that we use, so that you don't want to cure one problem and create another. So I think there's a balance, but I'm quite happy. We don't have blackgrass here, which is one of the harder weeds, arable weeds to kill. So we're not looking at a huge problem with weed killer, and it's just a case of having an appropriate amount of biochar and remembering that fact when we choose what else we're doing.
Would it be fair to say that fertiliser is a really simple option, which allows the plants to take up those nutrients, whereas going regen needs much more thought, and it's actually taking the nutrients that are already there in the soil and the air and getting them so that they are water soluble for the plants to take up?
Absolutely. I think ammonium nitrate and urea to some extent, but ammonium nitrate is a blunt instrument. You put it on the crop, it grows, and it grows more. And the situation post Second World War was this country needed food. That was part of the development in the 70s, and that's what it did. And we were advised and encouraged to put it on. It was cheap, it grew bigger crops. Probably most importantly, we then developed varieties that fitted with ammonium nitrate. So now
varieties of seed?
Of crops, wheat, barley and so on. We chose the varieties that responded best to it. Now that's causing us a little bit of a headache now, because one of the side effects of high yield and ammonium nitrate is disease susceptibility. And so what I'm starting to think is that we're handicapping ourselves by trying to use the wrong varieties. We need to go back several steps and find some varieties that are more naturally resistant. They may not be quite as high yielding, but in terms of cost effectiveness and reducing our inputs, they might be more profitable, and they will certainly be less damaging to the environment because we won't have to put as much chemical on.
Is that the same as going back to rare breeds in cattle and pigs, because they often are more resilient and are suited to their environment? That's why they were bred in that environment.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that in it. I mean, in the animal world, the rare breeds and the traditional breeds are more hardy. You can graze them outside for longer. They'll grow a coat of hair to keep them warm. So I think there is quite a lot in that. And I think that the markets that we're trying to produce food for are changing. They're more discerning, they're thinking about where their foods come from, they think about the taste and quality of their food, and to that extent just yield isn't the only criteria. The story behind it, what it tastes like and what you've done, how you've produced it, are all part of it.
Now, I know you've spoken a lot about money, but how does it make you feel trying to educate yourself to this degree about, because you are quite scientific, aren't you, unlike me? How does it make you feel in terms of the farm and the future?
Well, I think you can beat yourself up about where you're at. You can say that the profitability has effectively, in two stages. Basically, your profit equaled the subsidy that you were given, so when the subsidy was taken away, then your profit went as well. And so you can beat yourself up about that, or you can do something about it. And I have had periods of time when I thought, what a waste of time this is. But it's actually brilliant to have some information that shows you a positive way forward and a way back to a sustainable system, both in terms of environmentally sustainable, but actually business-wise sustainable as well. And I just think the matrix has changed, and we're learning. And for me, it is a bit late in the day, I have to say, but better late than never. But I just feel really positive about the fact that I'm learning about what we're doing. I'm having to justify what we're doing, and if we can't justify it, then we have to look very seriously at not doing it. And I think that's part of regenerative agriculture.
And of course there's a biodiversity gain.
Obviously, absolutely. I mean, we live in a glorious part of the world, and so if we can farm successfully in it and enhance the rest of it, why would you not do that? To destroy it just seems very irresponsible.